It's a late night in Seoul when Kang Seung-hye heads back to her apartment. Upon arriving, she discovers that the lights are out and hears an odd noise coming from the closet. Curious, she investigates but finds nothing there. Just as she turns to leave, a shadowy figure suddenly attacks her. Fast forward to the next morning in another apartment within the same building, where Cho Kyung-min is blissfully unaware of the man snuggled up next to her. He stirs awake when his old watch alarm goes off and quietly slips away after enjoying some of her breakfast. A few minutes later, Kyung-min wakes up with a headache, a recurring issue for her lately. She notices her milk supply is running low and tidies up her space before heading to work. As she exits, she spots some dirt on her door lock keypad and wipes it clean before entering her code. At the office, Kyung-min feels a bit annoyed when a fellow clerk keeps poaching her potential clients, which also frustrates her best friend and co-worker, Oh Hyo-ju. While riding the train, they engage in a conversation about work, completely unaware that Kim Gi-jeong is observing them. When Kyung-min reaches her building, the night shift guard, Han Dong-hoon, hands her a box that the day shift guard had left for her. She takes the box to her apartment, where she finds a note from her mom on the door. The note explains that her mom couldn't get in and left the package at the reception. However, the lid of the box is ajar. Kyung-min calls her mother to clarify that she frequently changes the password and should be notified in advance about visits. She also inquires if her mom left the lid open, which her mother denies. After settling into bed, Kyung-min hears a noise outside. Someone is attempting to enter her lock but is unsuccessful. This person also tries to force the door open but ultimately leaves empty-handed. After a few moments, Kyung-min peeks through the peephole and opens the door, only to find the hallway empty, save for a cigarette butt on the floor. She contacts the police to request fingerprint analysis on the cigarette, but they remind her that despite her repeated reports, they can't take action without an actual crime being committed. With no other options, Kyung-min reluctantly goes back to sleep, unaware that once again a man is in her apartment, using her bathroom and dozing off beside her. The next morning, she wakes up with another pounding headache. As she leaves for work, she checks with the day shift guard about reviewing the security footage, and he confirms it's possible, so she plans to do it later. Before heading to work, she stops by to meet a realtor and view a smaller but pricier apartment in a different building. During her lunch break, Hyo-ju playfully suggests that she should consider getting a boyfriend for added security, maybe someone like Kim Seung-hye, a coworker who was always kind to her. At work, Kyung-min confidently asserts herself and prevents the other clerk from taking the next client, who turns out to be Gi-jung. In her attempt to secure a significant sale, she engages him in light conversation and learns that they are neighbors. Gi-jung even mentions that he has noticed her around. After completing his transaction and receiving her business card, he invites her for coffee. When she declines, he begins to create a scene, accusing her of flirting and claiming she shouldn't pretend just to make a sale. Seung-ho steps in to defend her, calling security when Gi-jung refuses to calm down. Later that evening, as Kyung-min returns to her building, she notices Dong-hoon being reprimanded by his boss for the frequent incidents at night, suggesting that the police shouldn't be needed when he is on duty, unlike the day shift guard. Taking the elevator, she shares it with the man heading to the same floor, and once they arrive, she waits for him to reach his door before stepping out herself. Later that night, after she settles into bed, the enigmatic man who has been using her apartment emerges from beneath the bed. He quietly sedates her, then proceeds to use her toothbrush and take a shower. Before slipping into bed next to Kyung-min, he meticulously cleans out the drain, ensuring not a single hair is left behind. The following day at work, her boss summons her to his office to inform her that her contract has ended. However, he mentions that her performance has been impressive, and the company is interested in offering her a permanent position. Despite this good news, she doesn't seem thrilled, as she's struggling with her mental state. Later, while putting in some extra hours, she receives a call from an unknown number, but chooses not to answer. When the stranger calls again while she's waiting at the bus stop, she ignores it once more, only to be approached by Ji-jung. Kyung-min attempts to escape, but Ji-jung catches her and insists she take a taxi with him, reminding her of the debt she owes him from the incident at the bank. Seung-ho pulls up in his car just in time, sending Ji-jung on her way before offering Kyung-min a lift. He reassures her that she can always reach out for help whenever she needs it. Once she gets to her apartment, she discovers the lights are out and someone is knocking at her door. It's Seung-ho, returning the wallet she accidentally left in his car. As she opens the door to retrieve it, he notices the darkness and offers to help fix the lights. After he gets everything working again, Kyung-min invites him in for coffee. While he steps away to use the bathroom, she realizes that many items in her apartment have been rearranged. Confused about how he knew her apartment number, she heads downstairs under the pretense of getting coffee, but instead she calls the police to request a welfare check on her place. Detective Lee arrives with an officer, and when they enter, they find Seung-ho dead, his tie hanging from the doorknob. Kyung-min is brought to the police station for questioning because they find it suspicious that a third party killed Seung-ho while she was on the phone with the police. They suspect she might be involved in the crime. However, there isn't enough evidence to support this theory. In fact, her previous reports about someone attempting to break into her apartment indicate that she is actually a victim, leading the police to release her. A few days later, when she returns to work, her boss informs her that the offer for a permanent position is no longer available, and since her contract has ended, she must leave the job without any employment. Once back at her apartment building, she requests to view the security footage, only to discover that the hallway cameras are fake and the only recording is of her in the elevator. The guard suggests that the person who tried to open her door was likely just a confused, intoxicated neighbor. Despite this, Kyung-min remains anxious and asks the guard to inspect her apartment before she goes inside. Fortunately, it's empty, but she notices that things have been rearranged and there are coffee beans scattered on the floor. After reaching out to her realtor to confirm her desire to move as soon as possible, she starts cleaning the beans and discovers a key from another apartment hidden under the cupboard. Recalling what the guard mentioned about the neighbors, Kyung-min sets off to knock on doors to find out which apartment the key belongs to. She eventually arrives at Seung-hye's apartment, but it's vacant and appears to have been unoccupied for quite some time. At least she manages to get Seung-hye's name from some mail, prompting her to ask Hyo-ju if she can use the work computer to look up Seung-hye's card statement. The statement reveals that every day at 8 p.m., she makes a purchase of something costing $3 at a nearby convenience store, except on Saturdays when she goes at 1 p.m. The statement also includes her phone number, so they attempt to call and text her, but there's no response. Since it's Saturday, they decide to head to the convenience store in hopes of running into her there. They come across some packaged porridge priced at $3, but that doesn't really matter since she could easily buy two less expensive items that total the same. They decide to take a break and have lunch right there in the store. While they're eating, Hyo-ju receives a response to her text just as they spot a woman purchasing the porridge. They follow her into a sketchy neighborhood and reach a fork in the road, prompting Hyo-ju and Kyung-min to split up to cover more area. After a bit of running, Hyo-ju catches up to the woman, only to feel let down when she realizes she's not Seung-hye. Meanwhile, Kyung-min discovers a cat munching on a porridge cup, and when she peeks behind the door of the building the cat scurries into, she finds a stash of empty cups, indicating someone has been feeding it. She crosses the garden and approaches the house, noticing it has the same lock as the apartments in her building. After entering a few incorrect codes, she recalls the night someone attempted to break into her place and the dirt on the keypad. Remembering the pattern, she tries that code, and it works. The house initially appears deserted, but as she enters the bedroom, she discovers the real Seung-hye bound to the bed, unconscious, with an IV drip attached to her arm. Kyung-min dials 911, but before she can relay much information, the assailant returns, prompting her to hang up and seek refuge under the bed. This enigmatic man possesses Seung-hye's phone and has been responding to Hyo-ju's messages. He is now administering a lethal injection into Seung-hye's IV, revealing that he has found a new target, a stunning woman living just below Seung-hye, which is Kyung-min herself. When he steps out to retrieve something from another room, she cautiously emerges from her hiding spot and positions herself behind the door Witnessing the man return with a saw, he pulls back the blanket covering Seung-hye, exposing her mutilated legs, and it becomes clear that her fate is dire. Just then, the sound of police sirens pierces the air. As the man moves toward the window to investigate, she seizes the opportunity to flee the room and escape the house. As she approaches the door, she suddenly realizes her phone is missing and ringing somewhere behind her. The criminal, hearing the sound, moves closer and taunts her about forgetting it before he starts pursuing her through the streets, his face hidden by a mask and cap. She screams for help as she flees, but her cries go unheard, leading her to take refuge in an abandoned shop. The stranger tracks her down, and just as he's about to attack, Hyo-ju bursts in and strikes him with the hand truck. He quickly recovers and retaliates, but just then a police car drives by, prompting Hyo-ju to shout for assistance, forcing the criminal to flee. Shortly after, Detective Lee arrives, scolding her for what he believes is a fabrication. The house is deserted. Kyung-min's phone is missing, and all she knows about the assailant is that he wears an old-fashioned watch. Their conversation is cut short when an officer interrupts, announcing they've discovered something: Seung-hye's body in the trash, clutching Kyung-min's business card. Hours later, the police bring Gi-jong in for questioning after discovering he had Kyung-min's card. Security footage reveals that he has been trailing her, and his old watch and carpenter skills give him access to tools like saws. Detective Lee presses him hard, causing Gi-jong to lash out in anger, which leads to a slip in his confession that provides grounds for his detention. After he apologizes, Lee allows the women to return home, assuring them that they are on the case. Kyung-min finally settles into her new apartment, taking extra precautions to secure her doors and windows. Meanwhile, Gi-jong is released due to insufficient evidence, prompting him to head to the apartment building in search of Kyung-min. Upon learning she has moved, he concocts a story about being her cousin with urgent news about her father's health, convincing Dong-hoon to give him her new address. A short while later, Kyung-min receives a package at her door. Inside, she discovers the phone she had dropped at the killer's house, filled with numerous photos of her sleeping. Just then, her new phone starts ringing, and it's Hyo-ju calling. When she answers, she sees a hidden video of the murderer at her friend's place, completely unaware. In a panic, Kyung-min rushes out without her keys and heads to Hyo-ju's building, managing to slip in just as someone else is leaving. The video shows the killer working on a foot, prompting Kyung-min to hurry to the correct apartment, but she finds the door locked. Desperate, she grabs a fire extinguisher to break the lock, but before she can make much progress, Gi-jong appears and strikes her, trying to drag her away for coffee. Fortunately, a neighbor hears the commotion and Kyung-min's cries for help, leading the police to arrive just in time to subdue Gi-jong. Now free, Kyung-min breaks the lock and rushes into the apartment, where she discovers Hyo-ju bleeding on the bed. At her new apartment, a shadowy figure quietly returns her keys to the spot where she had left them. Later on, Kyung-min pays a visit to Hyo-ju in the hospital. Thankfully, Hyo-ju hasn't lost her foot. She only has a scar from where the attacker started to cut for the video, and she reassures Kyung-min that she doesn't hold her responsible for the incident. Lee also speaks with Kyung-min, explaining that it was all a setup and the criminal had pre-recorded everything to lure her out of the apartment and catch her off guard. They have apprehended Gi-jong, and now they just need to wait for the DNA test results. To help Kyung-min feel more secure, he gives her a security camera disguised as a penguin. Once home, Kyung-min sets up the camera. Later, she heads to the convenience store and unexpectedly runs into Dong-hoon, though she doesn't recognize him at first. The conversation turns awkward when he mentions that no one can harm her now that the criminal is behind bars, prompting Kyung-min to hastily pay for her items and leave. However, she can't resist glancing back when she hears something unusual. Dong-hoon is spending $3 on the same packaged porridge that the cat had been eating, and he's wearing an old-fashioned watch. Feeling anxious, she hurriedly makes her way back home, where she receives a call from Lee urging her to stay put. She learns that Gi-jong has been released due to a DNA mismatch, but tragically, he has now been found dead. As she glances at a cup of porridge on her cupboard, She decides to check the security footage and discovers Dong-hoon sneaking into her apartment and hiding under her bed. Just then, he reaches out to grab her, prompting Kyung-min to dash for the door in a desperate attempt to escape. However, before she can even turn the handle, Dong-hoon knocks her unconscious. Hours later, Lee starts searching for her after noticing on the security footage that Dong-hoon had taken her away in his car. One of his colleagues contacts him with crucial information. Dong-hoon had quit his job and vanished the day after Gi-jong's death. It turns out he previously worked at a hotel near Yangpyeong Lake, which had closed down following a guest's tragic suicide. Shortly after that incident, Dong-hoon relocated to Seoul and began working in Kyung-min's former building, which is also linked to an unsolved case. Kyung-min finds herself waking up in an unfamiliar room with Dong-hoon holding her close. He has brought some of her belongings from her apartment and even changed her into her pajamas, claiming he wants her to feel at ease. However, she realizes she has been sedated and currently has an IV attached to her arm. Dong-hoon is upset that she didn't recognize him at the store and tells her the door is open for her to leave whenever she wants, but warns that if she does, he will have to harm her hands and feet. As she suddenly starts coughing violently, Dong-hoon leans in to comfort her, giving Kyung-min the opportunity to bite his ear and jab one of the needles from the nightstand into his hand. Still feeling the effects of the sedative, she manages to drag herself out of the room until her legs regain strength, allowing her to run down the stairs. However, she discovers that all the doors are locked, and the only room with an open door has its windows sealed shut. Hearing Dong-hoon approach with an axe, Kyung-min quickly picks up a shard of glass from the floor to protect herself, but just as he is about to enter, a loud crash reverberates through the house. Lee has finally arrived to assist her. He calls out her name, and as she responds, Dong-hoon leaps behind him, leading to a struggle over the gun that results in bullets flying into the air. Suddenly, Kyung-min notices the silence and steps out of the room. She picks up an axe she finds on the floor and goes in search of the men, only to discover that Dong-hoon has stabbed Lee. With plans to come after her next, she quickly pulls the carpet from under him, causing him to stumble, and seizes the gun, but to her dismay, it's empty. Dong-hoon then grabs her by her clothes and slams her head against the floor several times before he retrieves his axe. Just as he's about to finish her off, she pushes him back by digging her fingers into his wounds. However, this only fuels his rage, and he throws her against a wardrobe, which collapses on both of them. Dong-hoon's hand gets caught on a sharp edge, but he still reaches out with his other hand to grab her. In response, Kyung-min does everything she can to fend him off, hitting and kicking. She notices that one side of the wardrobe is about to give way, so she attempts to push it aside to create some space. Just then, Dong-hoon manages to free his hand and wraps both arms around her neck in a chokehold. Kyung-min instinctively places her hands on his shoulders and pushes him away, intending only to break free. Unfortunately, her push causes his head to collide with the wardrobe nail, resulting in his death. Later, Kyung-min returns to her everyday life in her new apartment, which is still filled with unpacked boxes. Before starting her day, she checks under the bed to ensure it's clear. And that's how the story wraps up. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content like this.